Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this 58th episode of Fishing for Men with Mac. Can a man become pregnant? Is there any way for a man to give birth to a baby? Just how natural is transgenderism and gender dysphoria? How realistic and natural is homosexuality? These and many more such questions will be touched on in this show for today. Thank you so much for joining in. It's so good to have you listening in. So let me just get straight into it and ask the question, what inspired this topic? So recently I went to go visit with a Christian family, and they've got this 15-year-old daughter. So I and others I know who are disciples of Jesus have been seriously concerned about this girl. She has been engaged in sexual activity in a way that I wouldn't even know how to explain on this podcast. She has been promiscuous since the age of 10, and it isn't as if she had grown up in a bad family. No, her parents quite well. She plainly says that she wants to do this and she doesn't care what anybody says. And, I'm trying to figure out, what psychological damage did you experience when you were a kid? Were you molested? Where did Satan make his entry into your life? Her lifestyle has created depression. She had tried to commit suicide, but still she believes that her choices are good. And she thinks that the way she views the world, the way that she views sexuality, the way that she views herself, it's normal, it's right, it's good. She's on a good trajectory, even though her mentality is leading her to want to take her own life. Just engaging with her has just shocked me as to how confused the young people are of today. And so I tried so hard to connect with her, trying to find out how to get through to her. And it became so clear that her mentality, her way of thinking, the patterns of her understanding of the world came through social media. This girl's whole life is illustrated on and is lived through TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and I don't know what else. There's all kinds of other things out there, and that's literally where this girl is living her life. She's living her life through her cell phone, and that doesn't sound too bad until you come a little bit closer and you start to realize, yes, so she can express herself through these platforms. But the problem is this: millions of people across the world with various warped worldviews and various warped ideas of sexuality and gender are expressing their ideas on the Twitters and all the types of social medias out there. And she's sitting in her room reading those things, watching those TikTok videos, being influenced by those things. So social media is a platform, it's a breeding ground for hybrid ideas, for the sickest ideas in the world. Okay, and so I would say social media is the number one culprit. The videos and images that she sees on social media has created her way of thinking. She showed me a TikTok video. Well, she didn't want to show me the video because she knows I'm like an evangelist, but she told me about it. Her brother told me about it. She made a TikTok video of someone writing on her buttocks. And there's another video where she's half naked. There's a video where she explains, this is where she lip syncs another singer on the video, where she claims that she is bisexual. She's aged 15. Okay, she claims that she's bisexual. She's had millions of views on those videos. So, she has practiced homosexuality on numerous occasions, and she thinks that is normal. Let me just interject. We underestimate the danger of social media. We really do underestimate it. When I grew up, the people that could influence me were my friends at school, the friends at church, my family members, and maybe the neighbors that I had, people living in my street. Okay? Only the people I could physically come in contact with could influence me. I remember when I was 15 years old, that's the first time I got a cell phone. I was 15 years old when I got a cell phone. There were no Mix It even. There were just, you could only SMS. and you could only phone. So you couldn't see photos, you couldn't see images. Then it sort of started broadening a little bit, but not really, because you could, even before that, we could phone people. But it was really only the people who had physical contact with you that could influence you. And so, maybe you had a few hundred people who could influence you. Maybe not even a few hundred, maybe just 50 people that surrounded your life that could influence you. But today, on social media, evil is put on display by millions of people. You put one video on Twitter or one photo on Instagram or one video on TikTok and you influence millions of people. Not in one day, in half an hour. You influence millions of people in 30 minutes. It's so easy to influence people, and it's so easy to be influenced. And so teenagers are eating up visual images and videos and ideas that are brainwashing them at the rate and at an inexplicable rate. The world of a kid has grown exponentially. When I was a kid, 50 people influenced me in a week. A kid today with social media is influenced by millions of people in a week. Someone sitting in China can influence your kid's thoughts through a phone or a video. It is absolutely crazy, isn't it? Anyways, with that out of the way, let me get back to this girl. And so I asked her if I could look through her phone. I'm trying to make her feel like comfortable and things like that, And so she gave me some rules. She said, yes, you can look through my phone, but, not read there. Don't go there. I want to watch you where you go and what you do. And I'm scrolling through the images on her phone, and it didn't take me long to realize just how lost she is and how warped social media has made her mind. Because you could see on her phone the things that are important to her and the things that she thinks and believes. And so I came across photos of pregnant men on her phone. That's right. Are you pausing with me? I came across a photo of a pregnant man. Now, the reason why I said that, I'm saying this is because I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was a man sort of in a garden with soft features everywhere, and he's got a pregnant belly, and at the same time he's got chest hair and a beard. And so I thought, it's probably a joke, So I'm looking for some kind of joke on the image. And so I asked her, I said, this isn't real, right? And she was like, no, it is real. Look at the picture. There it is. It's in front of you. It's real. I mean, look, you can see it for yourself. I was like, what? You actually believe this is real? You believe that there's a man that is pregnant and this is this isn't Photoshop, this is normal? You see a picture and you believe it's real and true? I said to her, and she said, yes, obviously it's true. Can't you see the picture? Duh. I said to her, don't you do fact checking? Do you know what fact checking is? Don't you, if you see something like this, don't you go check for yourself whether it's true or not, that a man can give birth to a baby? And she said, no, I don't go check everything. Look, it's the picture. I believe the picture. I was like, you see a picture and then you simply believe it is true? You don't believe that Photoshop exists? Do you see how easy it is for a teenager to believe nonsense? No wonder this girl is so stuck deep in sin. And so I told her to check things before she believes it. So she then, right there with me, she Googled, has a man ever given birth to a baby? I think that's about the exact words that she typed into Google. And I was like, cool, okay, now you will see for yourself. You won't believe this, ladies and gentlemen. Google answered, yes. I'm going to read you the exact words. Yes, Thomas Beattie has been known as the pregnant man after he became pregnant through artificial insemination in 2007. Now she's reading this to me and I'm like, what? Beattie chose to be pregnant because his wife Nancy was infertile, doing so with cryogenic donated sperm. Beattie has since given birth to 4 children. And this girl was like, well, there, I've checked the fact for you, so it's obviously true, this photo that I've showed you. You see there? Yeah, there you go. Men can have babies. And I'm like, goodness me. I was like so shocked. So I asked her to Google again, can a man get pregnant? You know what Google said? Yes, It's possible for men to become pregnant and give birth to children of their own. You can imagine how I'm losing it that even Google lies. Well, that's probably not a surprise for most people. I mean, who's holding Google accountable for always revealing the truth, right? She then types something else about how can a man carry a baby? And you won't believe it. Google also answered that to some extent, talking about how an embryo can be implanted somewhere in a man's belly, be fed through the intestine of the man, and then be removed surgically. Now, by this time I was sick. Here's this girl. I'm trying to prove to her that it's a scientific fact that a man cannot have a baby, and Google doesn't even reveal that truth. So this poor girl, she is stuck in a world where she won't find out what the truth is unless she comes into contact with somebody that will clearly show it out to her. So if she's just connected to her phone and she just chooses to believe whatever Google says and whatever image comes across her path, she's doomed to destruction. She's doomed to a world of lying. Here is this poor girl. Social media lies to her. Google lies to her, and she just believes it. In her mind, therefore, homosexuality, transgenderism, bisexuality, it is all normal. Women are not women and men are not men. And I find that terribly disturbing. So let me provide the truth on this podcast about the question for in case you ever come across anybody out there that don't know the truth. Here's the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Men cannot give birth to babies or become pregnant. If you don't have a uterus, you can't get pregnant, you can't have babies. Now, I would like to see the stats, but I reckon most teenagers like that girl, they don't even know this truth. This is a basic truth, and maybe you started listening to this podcast, you saw the heading, and you're like, oh, why are you even doing a podcast on this? I mean, everybody knows, duh, man can't have a baby. Believe you me, I saw it firsthand. The new generation, they actually believe it's possible for a man to have a baby because they've been so confused. And you might be saying, well, okay, I hear you saying this, but what about what Google says? What about Thomas Beattie? Well, if you go do further reading, which this girl probably wouldn't do, which most teenagers won't do, Thomas is not a man. She is a woman that had gender reassignment surgery. In other words, she was born a woman. She is gender confused, okay? She could carry babies because she had a uterus. So it isn't a man giving birth, but it is a woman giving birth. But because of this gender ideology going about, Google calls her a he, a man. Another example that I came across is a lady by the name of Freddie McConnell. She also gave birth to a baby while looking like a man. And to be honest, it makes me sick. You know, I've got respect for people and I love people, but it makes me sick. Here is this woman. She took drugs, testosterone, to lose her femininity. She has a beard and chest hair. She doesn't have breasts anymore because that's one of the first things she cut out. So she kept her uterus and all the other tools, but she took off her breast. And here there's this photo of this woman that looks like a man cuddling a baby that she can't breastfeed anymore. She had destroyed the nurturing machine that God has given her so she could look like a man. And in both cases, their breasts are removed, but they retain their vaginas. I listened to another lady talk about her experience, and her name is Ari, and there's a YouTube video on this. You can go check it out, but don't expect to enjoy that. And they did the same thing. She chose a good friend, asked if he would donate his sperm, and then entered it with a syringe in their bathroom into her private parts. And then she fell pregnant. She's married to a woman. The wife sees herself as a lesbian, and so she doesn't believe she is married to a man, but a woman, even though she looks like a man. And she also wants to get pregnant. And so you've got two women married to each other, and both of them want to have kids, but the one has got a kid now and looks like a man. The worst for me, watching this video, this whole ordeal of Ari on YouTube, is when she gives birth. I don't know, I want to pull the hair out of my head. She had taken so much testosterone that she had a beard and sounded like a man. And there you see her while she gives birth, with a beard, with a deep man voice, groaning through the birthing process with a man voice. I'm just going to stop here because this is just so confusing. So what we have here is a woman who wants to be a man, but also wants to experience the greatest blessings of being a woman. And so this person wants to pick and choose which of the sexes they want and end up becoming a sick mixture of the two. Anyways, going back to the questions in the beginning. A man cannot become pregnant. Only a woman can. A man cannot give birth to a baby. Only a woman can. Only a uterus can carry a baby. LGBTQ is not normal and it's not natural. It is birthed in sin and it's a rejection of the creation and the Creator. And we need to hold on to this because the temptation is going to come, ladies and gentlemen, if you take Christ seriously. And some of you might be listening to this and you're highly offended because you have bought into the unnatural idea that it is just normal for a man to be with a man and a woman to be with a woman, and that's just normal. It's normal to be confused about your gender, and it is just not normal. Now let me show you why I say so, and especially if you're a Christian, and I've read this text before, but I'm going to read it again. It's not the first time that people are confused about gender and sexuality, and that people do these types of things. It's not new. Sometimes we go around and we think, well, this is new. It's not new. I'm going to read to you from Romans chapter 1. The wrath of God is being revealed. This is from verse 18. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and the wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified Him as God, nor gave thanks to Him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. And I just want to pause here and explain something. It is biblical theology that God has placed a moral law in the heart of every human being. In other words, whether you live in China, whether you live in New Zealand, doesn't matter what your culture is, we know in our hearts that stealing somebody else's stuff is wrong. We know it. Murdering somebody is wrong. There's a moral law that has been written in our hearts. And this text is talking about people who know the moral law, look at nature, knows that there is a God, but decides to ignore the fact that there's a God and to ignore the moral law in their hearts. And that's why their foolish hearts were darkened. Okay? Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal man and birds and animals and reptiles. And so what these people did is that they didn't want to acknowledge the invisible God whose attributes you can see in nature. They didn't want to acknowledge the moral law in their own hearts. And so what they did is they started to create their own gods. And so they made, a god out of rock or out of stone, or wood. And so they made these idols that they would then worship. Do you see where it starts? It starts with the idea of God. It starts with theology, okay? And so, therefore, listen to this. God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity with the degrading of their bodies with one another. And so, God gives them over. And, some people look at this and they say, well, God made people evil. No, this is not the case. God looks at these people and He sees, okay, these guys are going a bit far now. I'm just going to give them over. I'm not going to stop them because this is what they wanted to do. You see, God never wants to stop you. He wants you to have free will. Okay, and so He says, I'm not going to stop you to do this. I mean, for example, we know of some places in the Middle East where certain gods were worshipped, and the way that you would worship them was through sexuality. It would be through temple prostitutes, male prostitution. So one of the ways that pagans would worship their gods is through horrible sexual practices. Okay, and so this is what the text is talking about. Verse 25, they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator who is forever praised. Okay, so up to this point, you find that people when they don't want to acknowledge the creator of the universe, they start creating their own gods. And then one of the things that they do to worship those gods is to become degraded in their sexuality. And it's interesting that sex is the first place. Sex is the first place where you see deviance come with the God of the universe. Now it gets hard. Verse 26. Because of this, okay, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even their own women exchanged natural relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed indecent acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for their perversion. This is why the homosexual community is so filled with disease and every psychological illness that's imaginable. Furthermore, since they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, He gave them over to a depraved mind to do what ought not to be done. And so these people that are doing this to their bodies, their minds have been depraved. That's why they do that. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They are senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. And so, based on that text, let me tell you this: I will never approve of anything that's going on in the LGBTQ community. That does not mean that I don't love the people. It means that the practice of abusing the bodies that God has given us for some depraved form of sexuality, that's just not going to happen. So, let me just make an observation. The deepest experiences, the most powerful relationships we as humans can experience is this. It's sex. Isn't that the deepest, most intimate thing we can experience on the planet? And marriage and birth and experiencing family. Isn't that the most powerful areas of our lives? When a man and a woman come together, they have sexuality, marriage happens. And then a child is born, okay? Oh, now it goes deep love, and suddenly you have a family. That is the core structure. That is the core molecule of the greatest blessing in creation. And these are exactly the things that Satan are targeting. Just think about it. All the things going on in politics. This is what Satan is targeting right now. He's confusing us about sex. He's messed up marriage, and he's messing and fiddling with birth. He's fighting for abortion, and he does these types of and the family's messed up because now you've got two women or you've got two men in this family, and the kid wasn't birthed in a natural way, and so so Satan misleads us in the most powerful experiences that we can experience on the earth. He leads us astray there. And you know why he does it? Because those emotions are so strong. And it's from there where gender confusion ensues. So what would I like to say in this podcast? Protect yourself and others from the lies of the populace. Most people in this world do not believe the truth. They do not care about the truth. They do not want the truth. They create their own truth. Protect yourself and others from the lies of the populace. Secondly, use social media to spread truth, not lies. You know, you can climb off social media if you want to, great. If you've got the strength, just stay on there and use social media to spread truth. The entry point of depravity will manifest through sexuality. I'm going to say that again. The entry point of depravity will manifest through sexuality. Fourthly, LGBTQ, all of those issues will increasingly be pushed. But let me tell you this. More people will start accepting it. More people will start practicing it. But it will eventually lead to Sodom and Gomorrah. When God came down to see Sodom and Gomorrah, there were just a handful of people who have not subscribed to that type of depravity. God destroyed both cities. And it doesn't matter. The whole world can turn into bisexuals and gender confused people. The whole world can turn into homosexual depravity. God will destroy it all. Just make sure that you're not confused about it. Make sure that you're not part of that gang. You see, remember Lot's wife, when she ran away from Sodom and Gomorrah, God said, don't look back. And the reason why she looked back is because her heart was still stuck in that city. Her heart was stuck in LGBTQ. And that's why she turned into a salt pillar. And let me remind you, Jesus' own words. People say Jesus never spoke about LGBTQ. Jesus never spoke about homosexuality. No, he did, very clearly. Mark chapter 10 verse 6 is a very good example. In the beginning, God made them male and female. I'll repeat that. In the beginning, God made them male and female. The male provides the sperm, the seed, and the female provides the egg cell, and she's the incubator for that child. It's the way God made it. And human beings are trying to fiddle with it and confuse young people, which literally leads them to death. It would have been maybe a little bit of a different conversation if this 15-year-old girl was in the greatest high of her life and doing exceptionally well, fulfilling her talent roles and just excelling at school, excelling in her social life, excelling in sport, excelling, and she's healthy mentally and spiritually. And I would say it would have been a different discussion, but the evidence is everywhere that this type of depraved sin leads to death. She wants her life to end. She wants to commit suicide. And so it is so clear that this depravity and this darkness, it doesn't bless your life. It will take your life. And we need more people who stand up in this world and say, I agree with Jesus. In the beginning, God made them male and female. And human beings must try and stop anything else than that to develop in this world. Guys, enjoy the rest of your week. And thank you for listening in. Love you guys. Bye.